Hello again. It is my honor this afternoon to introduce the School Administrators of Iowa 2014 Superintendent of the Year, Denny Wulf. Denny Wulf is the superintendent of Norwalk schools and was chosen due to his impressive work to improve education at both the local and state levels. Please welcome School Superintendent of the Year, Denny Wulf.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, all you hearty souls who stayed to the end here to hear us. In the introduction, you heard that I have been selected as Iowa Superintendent of the Year. The question that's been most asked to me has been, how did you ever become Iowa's Superintendent of the Year? I want to talk to you about how I got here and the people that pushed me to this podium today and who coaxed achievement out of the Norwalk school districts, and that's my school board. If you're out there somewhere, would you please stand, Norwalk board, and folks from Norwalk that might be here? Thanks everybody for coming. So I want to tell you a little bit about our story. Significantly, where we began, our board superintendent team wrote a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great and the Social Sectors, the public sector. I would highly suggest it as a reading for all new board members. In fact, I suggest it as a reading for everyone. As all the experienced board members out there know, the public sector is really different than the private sector. The basic purposes, accountability, and practices, as my board president will often say, just won't make sense to you. In fact, the laws and the school's own inclinations create standardizing practices that inhibit innovation. As a result, schools can look slow, they can look cumbersome, and filled with bureaucracy. Probably because, compared to some of your private businesses, they probably are. How do we make schools more nimble and responsive in this era of change? How do we get public schools more responsive to change? Part of that change process will be guided by the new accountability system. You will notice a big shift coming for Iowa. The shift is from district-level accountability to building-level accountability. It's called attendance center rankings. That's a big change for us. It moves some of the accountability closer to the classroom by focusing on individual buildings rather than the entire district. The big question for all of us is, how do we enable this change? For Norwalk, the way we approached it many years ago, the transition began with 2 studies. My board and I attended 2 years of intensive lighthouse training with IASB. The trends we learned are on that slide, and they're posted on the IASB website, and the link is provided. One of the things I walked away from was a subtle but important difference from that training, is that we'd always shared a belief that all kids can learn. I didn't realize how passive that was. And we replaced that with a more aggressive way to look at it, is that our schools can teach all kids. I think that's an important difference that IASB has made in my life. We also conducted a parallel reading of district-level leadership that works by Waters and Marzano. We heard for the first time about something called defined autonomy. If you don't know what that is, you probably need to find out. It's the difference between our old governance system that required paint by number, and it's being replaced by a newer system that's more similar to color between the lines. In the research, we found 5 clear trends to help guide us. The first was to create an inclusive goal-setting process. And we have lots of things that we could share with you, and I'm only going to share one due to time for each of these 5. Norwalk has a SIAC that has over 100 members on it. This group's divided into 12 focus groups. They develop data and use action research and present their recommendations to the board for prioritization. The second we make some of these goals non-negotiable. 10 years ago, our SIAC brought to the board superintendent team 2 goals that they thought needed to be strongly considered. One group brought us 3rd grade reading proficiency. The second group brought us college and work readiness. What an intuition on the part of those 2. These 2 goals since then have focused many of our efforts. Third is the board alignment with and support of their own goals. The board continued to do their own professional readings. They announced publicly what their goals were. Really significantly, they created policy around those goals, and they kept their focus over time. The fourth is resources, and I'll mention a few ways that these goals have shaped our resources and directed them. We hired 2 curriculum directors instead of 1. We created an extensive summer school program. We keep elementary class sizes low. We expand the number of AP offerings. We created electronic portfolios that are required for all graduates in our school district, along with exit interviews before they can leave. They also realigned the graduation honors program, and now it parallels the Iowa Regents University entrance requirements. They thought that made a lot of sense. All of that happened in a district that does not have an excessive amount of money. Those of you who know Warren County realize that it's got some of the fewest assessed dollars behind each student of any place in the state. It was a matter of this board prioritizing what they believed was important. The final of these 5, and maybe the most significant over time, is monitoring. The board looks at standardized test results, I think as all boards do, but they also support conceptual things like CBAMs, concern-based adoption models that follow implementation of new programs to the district, like TLC. They also encourage monitoring by every level of our organization, including me. We have the principals that do a lot of walkthroughs. We have instructional practice inventories that are done by our coaches and other teachers. And I'm involved in AEA 11's network rounds. So superintendents come and visit our buildings. And this is about, need to go back one, about some of the awards that were won by Norwalk since we innovated some of these processes. I'm just going to give you a little time to ponder that. Okay, that's enough time, because anything more than that's probably bragging. But, and you know that public servants are supposed to be humble, so we'll just say that it caused a change in the way principals and teachers and I work in our school district. And people noticed, as you can see. The final slide. For those of you out there, and I know most of you are bottom line people, these are the achievement results in all 4 core areas from Norwalk over that 10-year period. During that time, we started and averaged somewhere around 80% proficient in all 4 core areas. Over a 10-year time, we've raised that about 10 points, 10%, about a point each year. And we're looking forward to increasing that over the next 10 years. In closing, the only thing I would say is I've mentioned change 11 times in this conversation. The stages of change are very similar to the stages of grief. Your folks will go through denial, just like mine do, anger about change. Finally, they'll roll around to acceptance, and they'll move on. But that process is not easy. Teachers and administrators over the next few years will lose things that they cherish, lose things that made them very successful under the old model. But this is a new paradigm and a new model. So I ask you to support them, to guide them, to encourage them to take risks. Don't insist on painting by the number, but do insist on coloring within the lines. You are probably the most integral part to the change process. You see a different world than educators see. And I want to thank you for your patience and listening to me this afternoon, and I wish you great success on your own journey. Thank you.